specialized reading. You have to be really into World War II and military history and chronology in general. I'll tell you, I've read some good historical sci-fi. I enjoy that. There are several good series on the Roman Empire that are, I think the definitive work of this genre is James Clavell, Shogun, which you read it and you're absorbed by the sex and the violence, and he develops the characters and they're fun. And oh, by the way, just in case you don't know it, you're learning about the Tokugawa shogunate, and he just substitutes the name Toranaga and then throws a Dutch sailor in to give the Westerners something to do and see. Those kinds of books I find fascinating because you can read and be entertained primarily with the sex and violence and character development, but you're still learning something if it's well written. There's an old series that was started back in the 80s written by a retired brain surgeon. Her name was, I think she was an Australian by the name of Colleen McCullough. And she was a brain surgeon back in the 60s when women didn't do that sort of thing, came into some money, went and researched for 13 years in Italy and throughout the Mediterranean world in excavations and talking to historians, and wrote these insane books, starting with Marius, Julius Caesar's uncle who reformed the Roman army, onward up through the three-way civil war after Caesar died.
Wow.
They're so well written. The only problem is that she's so into it that she has all the names of the Romans down, and so she helpfully includes a thick glossary of all the Roman names so that you can actually follow them. That's a brilliant series. There's another guy. What's his name? Oh, my gosh. Did you read Pillars of Fire, a.k.a. Thermopylae?
Yes.
That's a brilliant book. Do you remember the author's name?
No, maybe I'm misspeaking. I read a book, The Pillars of the Earth.
Oh, okay, no, Stephen Pressfield. Oh, if you haven't read this and you like history, Stephen Pressfield wrote this book probably 20 years ago, and his other books are good, but none of them ever touched this one. He wrote about a youth being brought up in Sparta, and he puts you there. I mean, he puts you there. And it's a Stephen Pressfield Gates of Fire, which is what Thermopylae means in English, is a brilliant book. There's one that was on the tip of my tongue that was similarly excellent. Oh, it'll hit me. I'm sorry. I'm dominating the talk too much.
No, this is great. I'm going to have to not work next year and just read all of these wonderful books. So, Harry Turtledove wrote one that's great for feminists or wannabe feminists. I had all my kids, my daughters, my son read it. A California coddled, spoiled, BMW driving feminist who's bitching about how bad her life is gets transported back to 2nd century Rome. That's all I'm going to say, because I'd be spoilers otherwise. It's very good reading, and it really puts you there in terms of day-to-day living and should make you extremely thankful that whatever its flaws, we live when and where we do. Awesome. So I picked the right guy to do this episode because your depth of knowledge with books is tremendous. I think I'm pretty good, and I pale in comparison to you. So I've started this summer is keeping track of the books that I've read in Goodreads, and I've been pretty disciplined about it. You know, I remember a lot, but then as I go along and you talk to people or you read something and it references something else, it jogs your memory. So I have, I think, logged into Goodreads, I don't know, some 270 books that I've read so far. And then in the app, and this is not meant to be a commercial for the app, you also put in, like, you know, books that you want to read. And that's where I've been just keeping track. So I'll take the books you gave me and I'll put them in the books to read section of the Goodreads app. And this one, when I go to the library or I'm looking for a book, I could scroll through and have some ideas at my disposal. And it works out pretty well. And so what are some of the books that you will be reading? Do you have kind of a lineup of what's next over the next couple of weeks and months?
You know, I have to get my Christmas selection. Let me see here. Let me go to Barnes & Noble and see what's on my Nook. What did I recently buy, and I'm therefore presumably going to read. But I like that Goodreads app. I'm going to have to get into that.
Yeah, it should be right up your alley. And then actually we could be friends on the app. I'm assuming you want to be my friend. But then you could see what I'm reading and how I rate the books, and I could do the same for you. And so far I only have 2 friends, so you'd be my third one. It'd be very exciting. But that works out pretty well, too. I'll tell you a few books that I'm going to be reading is Bill O'Reilly has this series, the Killing series. It started with Killing Lincoln, and I've read all of them. He has, I think, 2 more books under his contract. The next one, the next to last one in his contracted series with his publisher is going to be Killing Crazy Horse, about the Indian Wars. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I'm also reading a business book. I'm going to be reading Raving Fans, which is a little bit from a couple of years ago. And I also plan on reading the book Wisdom of Psychopaths. Sounds like it's right up my alley. I like it, John, a lot of those books that are psychology books, but not for psychologists, more about communication, the human condition, things like that. So some of those books are like Influence by Cialdini, How We Decide, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, Dan Kahneman.
Oh, that was a great book. Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. That's one that takes a lot of time to go through because it's so dense.
It's an amazing book.
That is something else. So I got my Nook thing open.
Hey, before you go to yours, we talked about Michael Lewis beforehand. And he has a book, The Undoing Project. And
Is it a bitching about Trump book?
No, it's not. It's a great bookend because he talks about Daniel Kahneman and his, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, and talks about his mentor, who was an Israeli professor. It's very good, and it bookends beautifully with Daniel Kahneman's book because it goes a lot into...
I read that. I didn't realize that was the name. He wrote a more recent book, which was a Trump's Destroying the World book.
Yes, I won't read that book. I won't read that book. I've read every book that Michael Lewis has written, but I alluded to this earlier in our conversation, but I didn't want to be as direct as you're being. And I read the excerpt of that book, and I'm like, that's too political for me, and it's not really what I like about Michael Lewis, so I'm going to stay away from that. I forget what that's called.
No, but I know which one you mean,
Yeah.
And I'll read it eventually. I do read a lot of what the other side puts out because my theory is you have to actually be open-minded. You have to know what it is you're rejecting.
I think that's very true. So I'm going to read Killing Crazy Horse and The Wisdom of Psychopaths, what I think fits into that human condition, psychology for everyday use. And I really like that. It's good for business. It's good for interpersonal communication with my spouse, children, friends. So I'm going to read that. I don't know much about it, but the title is definitely engaging.
Cool.
So what do you have teed up?
So there's more of a policy piece, but it's recommended by the Cato Institute, so I'll be curious to see. It's overcharged, why Americans pay too much for health care. And I have some idea, but I think this thing, just looking through it, looks like it has a lot of data. One I forgot to mention I did read. It's a really not a well-known one. The Chosen Few. It talks about why Jewish culture is the way it is, because I'm a real believer in how powerful culture is in forming us, and cultures have different strengths and advantages. Well, that's a tough culture. These are accomplished people who've been through a lot. I don't much care for their politics, but I respect their intellectual and artistic and economic achievement, and it's not an accident. And so this book was written by some Israelis who, and I'm not going to spoil the story. It is a little dry. It's written by economists, but they do use a lot of evidence as to why Jewish culture is so intellectual and so business-oriented. And it goes way back. It was really well written, as long as you can handle the dryness of it.
All right. The Chosen Few. Very good. And some of the other books that you think that you're going to tackle next?
Oh, let me scroll through here. And and I'll give you one more I did that you'll like. The Drill Master of Valley Forge, Baron von Steuben by Lockhart. That was really well done.
All right.
So I'm reading Blockchain Revolution. It's an older book that's been kind of updated, but I just need to understand more of what's going on with that technology, and these guys are evidently it. There's one called The 100-Year Marathon, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as a Global Superpower. And I don't think it's very secret. I think they've been pretty open about that.
I think so, too. I just read AI Superpowers about artificial intelligence. And
let me write that one down.
It's written by a venture capitalist of, I think, maybe Chinese descent, maybe Taiwanese. And he's done work in both countries. And it's, I'm not a big technology guy, deep diver into technology, but this is going to be the next big thing. Some people will say it's Bitcoin, but this AI technology revolution is going to be an absolute revolution in terms of everything that we do and how we interact, and it's going to have big-time effects on the economy and jobs and things like that. So it was very well done. My brother had recommended it to me. I can't think of the author. I'll see if I can find that. But
there's one by, so Jonathan Tepper is one of John Malden's guys, and I love Malden. He moved.
I love John Malden. He's one of my favorite economists.
So Tepper is one of his, like, they work together. They're co-writing a book on technology and the future, the myth of capitalism and how we don't really have it in the U.S. And in particular, he gets into monopoly power and oligopoly and the effects of it. Not a happy book from what I've seen so far, but an important one.
John Malden, he still produces great work, but is he like 99 or something like that? He's
a 71.
Really, I thought he was much older.
Yeah, he's here. I've got an offer, a standing offer to meet him. What I would like. He just discovered self-directed IRAs, and my response was, give me a year and a half. I want to finish building my team. I'm so focused on the practice. And plus, if I get along with the guy, and I'm arrogant enough to think I will, I could get a lot of business out of it, and I'm not ready for it.
Very good. Well, good. So thank you so much. This was a wonderful discussion. I got tons of good ideas. Hopefully I gave you a few.
We're going to swap ideas on that app. I'm going to go nuts with that app. You're going to create a monster. Trust me on this.
I think I probably will. And so with that, if anyone wanted to find out more information about your practice, which is focused on tax reduction strategies and building wealth through the use of real estate, is that a good description of your current business model?
Yeah.
How could they, listeners, if they were curious about you and what you have going on, how could they find you?
TaxReductionLawyer.com. TaxReductionLawyer.com.
And listeners, at my website, www.elliottwealth.com, I have a page on book recommendations. We'll put something in there that covers all of the books that John and I discussed today, both ones he brought up as well as ones I brought up, which I think is a small list relative to John's. But it'll be on the website. And if you're a listener and haven't been a client of ours yet or aren't a client of ours yet, please sign up for a no-cost consultation where we could discuss maybe some books, but also your financial goals and how we can help you increase your financial IQ and win with money. So I'll be back with the next episode of Simply Financial very soon. Again, John, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I really picked the right guy this year.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of the information provided at these websites, nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to your use of third-party technologies, websites, information,